What exactly is spousal support? Hi, I'm Alicia Kinchel, the attorney and founder behind Kinchel Law, a family law and estate planning practice based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. What is spousal support? When individuals come to me about divorce, the second question they usually ask, the first being what happens to their children if they have children, is what happens to their finances and how can they support themselves during the separation. Spousal support is defined as the care, maintenance, and financial assistance of one spouse to another. And that's because in our Commonwealth, each spouse, married persons, have a responsibility to financially assist in the support of the other person. And that means you're responsible for their financial support. There are some defenses to this. We're going to get to that a little bit later on in this video, but just have an idea or just know that that assistance does not necessarily have to be money or direct payments to that person. It can be in the form of health care or insurance. It can be in terms of payment of a part of medical expenses. It can also be in the form of mortgage payments, real estate payments, or real estate taxes that benefits both parties. So these payments can be made in different ways, and there can be accounting for those things when it comes later on to the equitable distribution of the assets. But we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit. In Pennsylvania, there are guidelines that determine how much a spouse is supposed to pay, and it's based on the net income and expenses of the parties. And those expenses that are considered are going to be some of the more unusual expenses that a person may have. So something that some wouldn't normally have, not your car note, not things like that. They're going to be other expenses. Maybe, again, maybe with regard to healthcare, maybe a large expense that you have to pay on a regular monthly basis that's not covered by your insurance would be an example of that. And that's what we call a place where deviations can occur. But getting back to the guidelines, I'm going to link to the guidelines in the show notes so you can have an idea of the formula that is used. And if there are children that are part of this marriage and the person receiving spousal support is going to also get child support, that is factored in as well. So I'll put, again, the link to those things in the show notes because you can actually kind of put in your income or your idea of your income, the idea of the other spouse's income, and kind of work down and get an idea of what the guidelines should say. And the reason why Pennsylvania uses guidelines is to make sure that decisions are not arbitrary, that there is some type of uniformity between similar situated citizens when it comes to determining how and what the spousal support award should be. Now, considering some things in terms of spousal support, it is an entitlement, but there is a burden of proof to prove that there was a voluntary separation of the parties and that it did not occur because of one spouse leaving involuntarily or without the consent of the other party, or that it did not occur with regard to some type of fault or what we call fault grounds. So in Pennsylvania, aside from separating or divorcing based on the consent between the two parties, people can divorce based on fault grounds. Some of those fault grounds include adultery. They also include abandonment. They include indignities. So if someone is filing for divorce or could file for divorce based on and substantiate a divorce based on fault grounds, those can be what we call affirmative defenses to having to pay a spousal support award. Now, spousal support aside, there are two other things that people kind of think about when it comes to support during the pendency of a divorce or after a divorce, and that's alimony and alimony pendente lite, what we call APL. So the one that we're going to talk about today in combination with spousal support is going to be APL because it is very similar, and the way that the courts have structured it now, the statutes have structured it now, you're not supposed to receive APL and spousal support at the same time. There is some case law that supports in limited circumstances maybe having both of those things in effect, but generally you have one or the other. APL is different than spousal support because it allows for kind of putting the parties on equal footing where the guidelines are a little bit more specific. In spousal support, APL allows for putting the parties on more equal footing and helping the other party be able to pay for their legal expenses. So imagine a situation where you have a spouse who basically may never have worked, who was the homemaker, and you have a spouse that is I won't say multimillionaire because there are different guidelines for cases where the income is above $30,000 a month. But in a situation where one spouse works and receives maybe $100,000 a year or $200,000 a year, and the other spouse doesn't, if they separate, that other spouse is going to have a hard time paying for adequate legal representation to make sure they're protecting their rights. So it's important that there are ways, and APL is one of those ways, to make sure that a spouse is put on equal footing and is able to have adequate representation throughout the pendency of the rights and be able to of the divorce and be able to support themselves at the same time. So APL is also something that has to be requested at the time or at some point during the pendency of the divorce. Spouse support can actually be requested or petitioned for prior to any divorce action taking place. So if the parties separate, it's possible that you would be able to ask for spouse support even though no one's filed for divorce. A couple of other things that a court might take into consideration as we wrap up this video, they could look at the duration of the marriage. So again, consider a situation where a person or a couple was married for maybe 6 months. You don't want, but the termination of the divorce, the actual divorce may take a year, may take 2 years. It's important that the other spouse is not hurt, put in a bad way, basically, because they have to now support the spouse for a way greater time than they were ever married. So one example is a case where the parties were married for only 6 weeks and a divorce action would take a year or 2 years to complete. The court did not allow for ongoing support because it would have harmed the other spouse to pay spousal support for a period of time way longer than the marriage even lasted. So again, spousal support terminates with a divorce decree. Sometimes that can turn into APL, and that can allow the parties to continue to litigate the economic issues after grounds have been approved, that they continue to exist, and there's a bifurcated divorce. But those are just a couple of things to know about spousal support. You should always, always, always speak with an attorney in your jurisdiction about the facts specific to your case. These videos are not meant to be legal advice in any way. They are information only. The laws change often. New cases come every day. So you want to be very sure to have an attorney who understands the facts specific to your case and also understands the laws, the codes, and the statutes and the jurisdiction where your case is going to be litigated. All right, until next time, take care.